Can a former colony tell its once mighty colonizer to pack up and leave? In Côte d'Ivoire, that question isn't hypothetical, it's reality. Recently, the West African nation has asked French troops to leave its soil. For decades, Côte d'Ivoire has been a cornerstone of France's influence in Africa, a strategic partner hosting French troops under agreements that date back to the colonial era. But now, the script is flipping. The departure of French soldiers isn't just a logistical change. It's a powerful symbol of Africa's growing demand for sovereignty and self-reliance. This moment isn't an isolated event. It's part of a broader movement sweeping across the continent, with nations like Burkina Faso and Mali leading the charge against foreign influence. Africa is rising, rewriting its story, and challenging the status quo. But what happens after this? Let's find out. Picture this. A nation once deeply tied to its former colonizer suddenly tells them to leave. That's exactly what Côte d'Ivoire did when it asked French soldiers to pack up and leave its soil. It's not just a political move, it's a declaration of independence, a bold assertion of sovereignty, and a clear message to the world. This decision has rocked the geopolitical stage, signaling a shift that is impossible to ignore.
Moscow has reacted to French being kicked out of Côte d'Ivoire. I know, fellas, this is crazy. France is set to hand over its largest military base in the Gulf of Guinea, Port Bouet. This is going to be handed over to the local authorities. The expected withdrawal is being portrayed as a significant step for the country to regain control of its defense installation. This is crazy, fellas. You see how African countries are very slowly starting to push France away. I mean, it started with Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, then followed through with Chad, and it's going and going. Senegal. I mean, something is happening here. Côte d'Ivoire is supposed to be best friend with France, because many people believe the president of Côte d'Ivoire is just there is because of the French. You know, it's crazy.
For decades, Côte d'Ivoire served as a critical hub for French military operations in West Africa. French troops were stationed there under agreements designed to ensure regional stability and protect French interests. These soldiers were seen as both protectors and reminders of a colonial past. But what makes Côte d'Ivoire's move so significant is that it isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a larger wave sweeping across the continent, a movement where African nations are reevaluating their relationships with foreign powers and redefining their futures. The decision to remove French troops is monumental not just for Côte d'Ivoire, but for Africa as a whole. It symbolizes a continent that is tired of being seen through the lens of dependency, tired of being told how to govern its affairs, and tired of foreign influences that often prioritize their interests over those of African people. This isn't just about military bases, it's about rewriting the rules. But before we dive into the ripple effects of this decision, it's crucial to understand why French troops were in Africa in the first place. How did we get here? And why is this moment such a turning point? To understand the significance of this decision, we need to go back to the colonial era, when European powers treated Africa as a giant playground of power. France was one of the most aggressive players, carving out a vast empire across West and Central Africa. When independence movements swept through the continent in the mid-20th century, it seemed like the colonial chapter was coming to a close. But the reality was far more complex. France didn't just leave. It negotiated deals to maintain a significant presence in its former colonies, particularly through military agreements. Officially, these agreements were about security. France would help its former colonies defend their borders and maintain internal stability. But over time, the lines blurred. These military bases weren't just about security, they were about influence. Take the CFA franc, for example, a currency still used by many former French colonies and tied to the French treasury. Critics argue that this system has kept African nations economically dependent on France, even decades after independence. The military presence served a similar purpose. By stationing troops in strategic locations like Côte d'Ivoire, France ensured it had a say in regional politics, access to valuable resources, and the ability to project power across the continent. For many Africans, this arrangement felt less like a partnership and more like an extension of colonial rule. Generations grew up questioning why their countries, supposedly independent, still hosted foreign soldiers. Was this really about stability, or was it about control?
The demonstrations began 2 weeks ago when tens of thousands of protesters gathered outside the base to demand its troops, as well as the French ambassador, leave the country. French President Macron said on Friday that France's ambassador in Niger is being held hostage at the French embassy by the military junta which seized power in July. Niger's military leaders ordered the ambassador's expulsion late last month, but Paris rejected it, saying it still regards President Mohamed Bazoum as the country's sole legitimate leader.
Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. These questions simmered for years, but in recent times they've boiled over. A new wave of African leaders and activists is challenging the old ways, demanding answers and, more importantly, action. Côte d'Ivoire's decision to send French troops home is one of the clearest signs yet that the tide is turning. But this isn't just about questioning France's presence. It's about a broader reckoning with foreign influence. So Côte d'Ivoire's decision didn't come out of nowhere. It's part of a larger movement sweeping across Africa, a movement fueled by frustration, pride, and a desire for true independence. They found themselves tied to former colonizers through military agreements, economic systems, and political influence. But now those ties are being questioned, and in many cases, severed. Take Burkina Faso and Mali, for example. These two nations were among the first to take a bold stand against French influence. Earlier this year, both countries expelled French troops, arguing that their presence did more harm than good. Their actions sent shockwaves across the continent, inspiring other nations to reconsider their relationships with foreign powers. Côte d'Ivoire's move is the latest chapter in this growing story of defiance. Why now? For one, there's a growing sense of frustration with the status quo. Many Africans feel that foreign powers have failed to deliver on their promises of stability and development. Instead, they see continued conflict, economic stagnation, and political interference. This frustration has given rise to a new generation of leaders who are unafraid to challenge the old ways. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso and Assimi Goïta in Mali have become symbols of resistance, showing that it's possible to stand up to foreign powers and win. But this isn't just about leaders. It's about the people. Across the continent, ordinary Africans are demanding change. Social media has amplified these voices, creating a pan-African conversation about sovereignty, dignity, and self-determination. Hashtags like Africa Rising and Bye Bye France are more than just trends. They're rallying cries for a continent ready to reclaim its story. Côte d'Ivoire's decision to join this movement isn't just symbolic, it's transformative. It's a statement that Africa is ready to lead itself, free from the shadows of its colonial past. But while this is a victory for the continent, it's a major setback for France. France is facing a reckoning. For decades, its influence in Africa was a cornerstone of its global strategy. Military bases like the one in Côte d'Ivoire weren't just about security, they were about power. They allowed France to project influence, access resources, and maintain its status as a major global player. But now, that strategy is unraveling. Losing Côte d'Ivoire as a military partner isn't just a logistical challenge, it's a symbolic blow. It signals that the old ways of doing business in Africa are no longer acceptable. For France, this is more than just a political setback. It's an existential crisis. How does a nation that built its identity on global influence adapt to a world where that influence is shrinking? This isn't just about losing a base, it's about losing credibility. France's role as a partner in Africa has been called into question, and the answers aren't flattering. Many Africans see France not as a partner, but as a relic of colonialism, clinging to outdated ideas of power and control. Meanwhile, other players are stepping in to fill the void. For France, this isn't just a challenge, it's a crisis. Can it adapt to a new reality where Africa isn't a pawn in its geopolitical game, but a partner with its agency? As France retreats, Africa is forging new partnerships, and two names are leading the charge: Russia and China. These countries are stepping into the gaps left by France, offering military aid, economic support, and diplomatic alliances. Russia, for instance, has established itself as a key player in countries like Mali and Burkina Faso. Through military contractors, grain shipments, and arms deals, it's providing the kind of support that France used to monopolize. And unlike France, Russia doesn't carry the baggage of colonialism. China, meanwhile, is taking a different approach. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, it has invested billions in African infrastructure projects, from railways to ports. These investments aren't without controversy, but they've positioned China as a major economic partner. For African nations, these new partnerships represent a shift toward a multipolar world. By diversifying their alliances, they're ensuring that no single foreign power holds too much sway. This isn't just about replacing one partner with another, it's about creating options. But while governments navigate these new relationships, how are ordinary Africans reacting? The people of Africa are celebrating, and not quietly. Across the continent, the mood is electric. In cities like Abidjan, Bamako, and Ouagadougou, citizens have taken to the streets, chanting, dancing, and waving flags. This isn't just a political movement, it's deeply personal. For many Africans, the departure of French troops represents a long-awaited moment of liberation, a chance to reclaim dignity and control over their future. The significance of this shift cannot be overstated. For decades, foreign troops were seen as symbols of both protection and control. They offered stability, but at a cost, one that many Africans came to see as too high. Generations grew up under the shadow of foreign military presence, questioning why their so-called independence came with such heavy strings attached. Now, the sight of these soldiers leaving is more than just a logistical change. It's a powerful statement of sovereignty. But not everyone is entirely at ease. While there's widespread support for the removal of foreign troops, there's also a recognition that the road ahead won't be easy. Building self-reliant defense systems, ensuring political stability, and maintaining economic growth are monumental tasks. Citizens are asking tough questions. Can these nations stand on their own, or will they simply trade one form of dependency for another? Will partnerships with countries like Russia and China bring true collaboration, or will they come with new strings attached? Despite these concerns, the overwhelming sentiment is one of hope. Africans are taking ownership of their narrative, and this moment feels like a turning point. Côte d'Ivoire's decision to remove French troops isn't just another chapter in Africa's evolving story. It's a headline moment for a country that has long been considered a pillar of stability and economic growth in West Africa. Known for its cocoa production and strategic location, Côte d'Ivoire has always been more than just another former French colony. It's been a regional leader, a trade hub, and a symbol of resilience. Now, by taking this bold step, it's positioning itself as a pioneer in Africa's push for true independence. This decision is as strategic as it is symbolic. Côte d'Ivoire isn't just pushing back against its colonial past. It's making a calculated move to redefine its future. For years, the country has worked to diversify its economy, strengthen its infrastructure, and reduce its reliance on foreign powers. Removing French troops aligns perfectly with this vision of self-reliance. By taking control of its defense, Côte d'Ivoire is sending a clear message. It's ready to lead, not just follow. But the path ahead is far from easy. Replacing the support provided by French troops will require significant investment in defense infrastructure, training, and regional cooperation. Côte d'Ivoire must also navigate the geopolitical complexities of forming new alliances while maintaining its independence. With countries like Russia and China eager to step in, the challenge will be to ensure that these partnerships remain balanced and mutually beneficial. For Côte d'Ivoire's leadership, this moment is an opportunity to set an example for the rest of Africa. If it succeeds in building a strong, independent military and maintaining its economic momentum, it could inspire other nations to follow its lead. But success will require careful planning, bold leadership, and the support of its people. As Côte d'Ivoire steps into this new chapter, it's not just shaping its destiny, it's helping to write the story of Africa's future. So, is this a new beginning for Africa? The changes sweeping across Africa aren't just political, they're cultural, economic, and deeply transformative. For decades, the continent has been viewed through the lens of dependency. Whether it was foreign aid, military support, or economic partnerships, the narrative always seemed to emphasize what Africa lacked. But now, that narrative is being turned on its head. More and more African nations are rejecting the old systems that kept them tied to former colonizers. They're embracing a vision of sovereignty that goes beyond political independence. This movement is about reclaiming control over resources, reshaping economies, and fostering innovation. It's about proving that Africa isn't just a player in global affairs, it's a leader. This isn't just happening at the governmental level. Across the continent, young entrepreneurs, activists, and grassroots organizations are driving change. They're challenging outdated systems, creating new opportunities, and building a sense of unity that transcends borders. The rise of Pan-Africanism, a vision of a united, self-reliant Africa, isn't just a dream, it's becoming a tangible reality. Of course, this new beginning comes with challenges. True independence requires more than symbolic gestures. It demands structural changes, from building robust institutions to creating sustainable economic systems. It also requires vigilance to ensure that new partnerships, whether with Russia, China, or others, don't replicate the same patterns of exploitation that Africa has worked so hard to escape. But despite these challenges, the momentum is undeniable. Every decision to reclaim sovereignty, like Côte d'Ivoire's expulsion of French troops, is a step toward a continent that's not just free in name, but free in practice. And as Africa rises, it's forcing the rest of the world to pay attention. And what's next for France in Africa? France is at a turning point, and the choices it makes now will determine its relevance not just in Africa, but on the global stage. For decades, its influence on the continent was a cornerstone of its foreign policy. The old model of influence, military presence combined with economic ties, no longer works. African nations are asserting their sovereignty, and the paternalistic approach that once defined France's relationships is increasingly unwelcome. If France wants to remain relevant, it will have to adapt to this new reality. But adaptation won't be easy. France faces competition from new players like Russia and China, who are eager to fill the gaps left by its retreat. These countries are offering alternatives that, at least for now, appear more attractive to African nations. For France, the challenge will be to engage with Africa as an equal partner, shedding the remnants of its colonial mindset and finding ways to contribute without control. Whether France can rise to this challenge remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the era of unquestioned French dominance in Africa is over. The continent is rewriting the rules, and France will have to play by them, or risk being left behind. And why does this matter to the world? This isn't just Africa's story. It's a global story. The shifts happening on the continent have implications that reach far beyond its borders. Africa's rise challenges the existing power structures, forcing a reckoning with issues of equity, sovereignty, and partnership. Africa is emerging as a continent of opportunity, innovation, and leadership. From trade agreements to climate initiatives, African nations are proving that they have the talent, resources, and vision to lead on their terms. This moment matters because it's about more than just politics. It's about dignity. It's about a continent reclaiming its identity, challenging outdated perceptions, and demanding a seat at the table. And as Africa rises, the rest of the world will have to adapt. For the people of Africa, this is a moment of pride and possibility. For the rest of the world, it's a moment to watch, learn, and rethink. The future belongs to those bold enough to claim it, and Africa is doing just that. Do you think Africa is doing the right thing? Should more nations kick France out? Let us know in the comments section. Do you think France should stay away, then to face the anger of Africans? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.